virtual meetings like a pro. So just quick intro to me. I'm Hallie Crawford. I am a certified career coach and founder of Create Your Career Path. Our website is halliecrawford.com. We have been coaching and training for just over 19 years now. I know some of you might be saying, gosh, she sounds like she's 12. How is that possible? I'm actually 47 and actually absolutely love what we do. And we've been trying to help people as much as possible with these trying times and difficult times that we're in. And specifically today, talking about how to handle virtual meetings in the right way, because there's a lot of pros and cons with doing things online like we are, but it's kind of a necessary thing that we need to do these days. And I'm thrilled to be here with you all today. We are based in Atlanta, Georgia, and we host virtual meetings like this all the time. I wanted to share with you first, as we start to dive in here today, what our basic agenda is. So here's what we're going to be talking about today for the next 30 minutes or so, and then we will have, by the way, Q&A at the end as well for about 10 to 15 minutes. So we'll be happy to answer any of your questions at the end of our presentation today as well, too, just FYI. So some quick background about what we're going to talk about today is these 4 things on the slide. We're going to talk about the setting and how to kind of set the stage correctly and effectively for your virtual meetings or interviews or whatever it is. We're going to talk about online, so to speak, or virtual etiquette. We'll talk about effective communication when you're working with people and meeting with them virtually versus in person. Communication is a little bit different, as I'm sure you all can understand and have experienced so far. And then finally, we'll talk about how to manage technology effectively, because this is a really big deal, as Katina and I experienced, right as we got on the phone today. I was actually on mute and didn't realize it right out of the box. So it's really important to kind of practice with that in advance too. If any of you would like a copy of the slides, in addition to receiving a recording of our webinar today, which we are recording, please feel free. At the bottom of this slide here is our email address. You can just email us at admin@halliecrawford.com if you'd like a copy of the presentation. We'd be more than happy to share that with you. And just so you all know, as I'm talking today, I'll be looking a little bit back and forth just because I have split screens, 2 screens here. So that's what's going on there. All right, so here's the deal, kind of quick intro and background to our topic. Obviously, virtual meetings these days are the norm. And there are pros and cons to using this kind of platform or having to meet with people this way. So take a look at this first slide here. And the cons or difficulties that we can experience with having virtual meetings is there can be distractions. And what I mean by that is not just on our computer itself, but as I'm sure you all have seen, there are funny videos online about people's cats crawling all over them when they're doing or hosting a virtual meeting, or someone might come into the room or whatever it is. And distractions in this way can be a little bit more uncomfortable than if someone just walked into your office, right? Because there's something about being on camera that understandably kind of makes us feel a little bit different or feel a little bit nervous. So we're going to talk about how to handle those distractions today. One of the other kind of cons is that in some cases, because people are meeting virtually versus in person, they may tend to treat it less formally, or it may seem to them, oh, I can kind of get away with being a little bit more informal. And we don't want you to do that. We want you to act and behave as professionally as you would if you were meeting with someone in person. And we'll talk about that today as well. The other kind of con of this virtual meetings is that it's a different way of connecting with other people. And so, like I said a moment ago, some of us get a little bit more nervous with being on camera or on screen versus meeting with someone in person. I was working with a client, it was actually just last week, and he is very senior in his career. He's in his mid-30s and has been at the same job and at the same company for years. But he was telling me that because of, in part, all of the stress and everything that's going on in the world, but for some reason for him too, leading virtual team meetings was starting to give him panic attacks. It never happened to him before. So please know that if it is nerve-wracking for you in any way, shape, or form, that you are not alone. It is normal. We're going to talk about all of that stuff today. But try to understand and realize as much as possible. What we're going to say is that we want you to think of this as just a regular conversation like you would with a friend or a colleague under normal circumstances. But one of the kind of downsides or difficulties is that it is a different way of connecting with people. So we'll show you how to get better at that. And then I'm sure you all have heard about a lot of people saying, gosh, I'm so tired of Zoom or whatever system it is that you tend to use, that we just get kind of burned out on the video chats. We have had clients tell us we're sick of the video chat and we just want to talk on the phone. We do think that that's okay to kind of break it up. But as we all can understand, at least meeting with people over video conference instead of just phone, it does establish connection in a different way and in a good way. So we want you to get used to that as much as possible. Because the pros are about this is that we have found with our clients too, is that in some ways meeting this way, we get to know each other more personally than we would otherwise, because you might see someone's child come in the room or their spouse or their partner or their cat or their dog or whatever it is, or you might notice something on the back wall that you want to comment on. So that's the good thing, is that our clients are telling us that they are actually getting to know people in a more personal way in some cases than they would have otherwise. That's one of the good things. Obviously, another good thing is the convenience of it, that we need to do this now to take care of other people's safety and health. And one of the other good things too about this is that we're able to connect with people in a more personal way, even when they're long distance. So there's a lot of good reasons to leverage this technology. And honestly, you can get really good at this just by using the tips that we're going to talk about today and practicing conducting these virtual meetings more and more. Okay, so let's talk about our first tip, and that is the setting, so to speak. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today is the proper attire. Okay, so this guy on this first slide here has his formal, obviously at least more formal business suit on. And the first thing that we wanted to tell you, if you take a look at this slide here, is that even though I know we're all working from home, and one of our clients told us the other day that he was meeting with a colleague and the woman had, a Hawaiian shirt on, just because we can be a little bit more business casual in some settings, right? And that was a talking point for them. And that was part of like, oh, they talked about that and where she bought it and everything else. And that was kind of cool. But especially if you're conducting a work or career related meeting, whether obviously if it's an interview, you want to err on the side of being more professional. But if it's anything that is more career related, you want to err on the side of dressing more professionally and being more formal than you would otherwise, okay? And as part of this, if you take a look at the second tip on this slide, is one of the things you want to be careful of is you don't actually want to wear something that is too busy and has a lot of patterns necessarily. You want them to be able to focus on you, your face, your facial expressions, your body language, and everything else. So do actually be mindful of not just if you're dressing professionally and more formally, but also it's okay to show your creative side, but you don't want it to be too busy. The other thing is for men, obviously you want to make sure that you shave. And also something that I always have to check out at the beginning is you want to make sure that your hair is in the right place. And I know this may sound like, okay, Hallie, of course I'm going to brush my hair and make sure it's in the right place. But for me, especially because I've got longer hair and some of it's going gray, there's always these stragglies all over the place. So please do get on your video conference well in advance, at least like 10 minutes in advance, obviously, or not obviously, I should say, but honestly, 10 minutes in advance, because you're going to need that time to kind of play around with the controls a little bit and make sure that your hair, makeup, everything else actually looks the right way. Because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten onto a video and I'm like, whoa, I look like that. I didn't realize it. So you want to just make sure that you look good, not just to make the good impression for the person that you're talking with, but also so that you feel confident and comfortable. So make sure everything's in place, okay? And I know that some of us, and you've probably seen memes and jokes about this, et cetera, that, we're only dressed up from, the waist up. But what if you have to get up to go, shut the door because your dog came into the room by accident or whatever it is? Make sure that you're fully dressed because you got to think about, gosh, what if I do have to hop up? I want to feel comfortable doing that. So this is not just about making the right impression. That's a big deal and that's part of this, but it's also about you dressing the part and dressing in a way that's going to make you feel confident and comfortable. You want to make sure that where you're sitting feels comfortable and good for you and allows you to sit up straight so that again, you're in a confident posture. Let's take a look at this next slide here, still under number 1 in our setting. The other thing that you want to pay attention to during the course of your virtual meeting is your nonverbals and the location, okay? So if you're anything like me with the first item on this slide, you wave your hands around a lot. I tend to do that because I'm very expressive when I'm giving presentations in person or otherwise. So one of the things that I tend to do is I make sure that I'm sitting close enough up to the camera where you can see me and you can connect with me well enough. I'm not way far back across the room. I've heard of people doing that, and that's just going to feel weird. So you want to imagine that it's almost like you were sitting with them across the room or, across a boardroom table or whatever it is. Okay. But also, if you're the type of person that tends to wave your hands around, you want to make sure that your hands are a little bit quieter at the, below the screen. And if you need to, by the way, because, for example, you get a little bit nervous when you're doing this, you can hold a pen and have a pad of paper right here to take notes or anything else, but maybe give your hands something else to do so that they're not waving around. Make sure that absolutely that you're not like this woman on the screen here, that you're not looking at your phone at any time, and that your phone and anything else in your home or in your office is on silent. Make sure that you're not looking at your phone. So what I would honestly do, unless you need your phone for texting purposes because someone during the course of the meeting may need to reach out to you, I would honestly just put it in the other room, okay? And again, as we said here, the last tip, number 4, and then we'll move to the next slide here, is get on the video early to check your appearance and your hair, like we said, how close you should sit, because every camera for different computer screens and laptops and et cetera, they're all different. So you need to make sure that the angle of the screen is right too, because you don't want it to be like you're sitting up too high or vice versa. You want it to be looking straight on like we are today. You want to make sure that the background behind you is appropriate and clean and not too cluttered. So again, they're focusing on you, okay? The other thing you need to pay attention to is the lighting. And I actually spelled lighting right on or incorrectly on this slide. I got to fix that. But I've had trouble with the lighting before because my office in particular has a lot of windows. I like looking out, over my backyard. And sometimes there's actually a shadow on my face depending on where the sun is. So you actually should be prepared to not just check the lighting, but maybe you need to have, a lamp that's close by that you can make some adjustments there if you need to turn it off or on. You want to make sure too.
It looks as if everyone is still in session. So please just hold tight. Let's see if Holly will be able to join us. Thank you for your patience.
Tina, when she comes back, maybe she can turn off her video and that will help.
Okay. Yeah, it looks as if she's still connected, so maybe she needs to log off and log back on. Hi, Holly, if you can hear us, you may want to try to log off or log back on because I know I'm not experiencing any issues, so we'll just sit tight. Thank you. Yeah, she's obviously having some internet issues.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can.
Okay. Stay off video. I apologize for that. I could hear you guys the whole time. Were you
Right.
able to hear this part of the slide at least? Like,
Yes, the last part that I heard was about the lighting.
great.
The
Okay. Let me pick up there. I apologize. So this is one of the things. I do have a backup internet where I can use my phone as a hotspot. And that actually is something that's good to have just in case, everyone. So know how to use your phone as a hotspot in case you have internet issues. So in terms of the lighting, we talked about that already. You may want to be ready with like a lamp or something like that. Be sure that when you log on early to prepare for your virtual meeting, that you know where the mute video and mute audio buttons are, because you may need to use them if somebody walks into the room or if there's a distraction that you need to handle. And then finally, you want to really pay attention to, this may seem obvious, but you want to make sure that your camera angle is at the right angle, because it's always different with different laptops and everything else. And you want to make sure that people can see you straight on, face on, versus they're looking at your chin or something else. So bottom line is, everyone, you don't want to be like this woman that's on the screen right now on the slide. You need to be present, ready to go, not on your phone, everything else. Let's take a look at the next slide. And I want to talk with you all about, just kind of basic online virtual etiquette. Okay. And this is tip number 2. So first of all, I always want, and I learned this the hard way when we first started doing webinars years and years ago, we would just assume that everyone could hear us and see us. And now we always do a quick audio and video check. And we will ask people to just let us know, hey, can you hear me effectively? And if they don't respond to us, or, we always check to say, can you see me? And if they don't give us a response right away, we always use the chat feature just to make sure from others on the call, yes, we can hear you. Because you just want to make sure that everything's running smoothly in advance, okay? When you're having your conversation, and just by the way, this is for professional meetings, not just interviews necessarily, but you want to err on the side of leveraging and using more formal language, not using a lot of slang or lingo that is necessarily specific to your industry, or as my 12-year-old son might use. I can't even understand what he says sometimes, because obviously there's always new kind of lingo that we're using. So when you're on a virtual meeting, again, don't fall into kind of the trap of, oh, well, because it's not in person, I can get away with being a little less formal. Absolutely not. You want to be professional and use your, more formal professional language the whole time that you're talking. And then as part of this etiquette, again, sometimes we might feel like, okay, well, we're working at home, we can be a little more informal. It's a good idea to prepare for what you want to say when you all log in. Is it welcome to the call? Thank you for being here. And how are you all doing, especially during this time? It's a really good idea. You want to just check in with people, because we're all undergoing and in a stressful place for, so many different reasons. So it's okay to share, but be prepared to say, I'm doing well, things are going well, I'm just kind of, laying low, but my family is healthy, and we're doing what we need to stay healthy and safe. Whatever it is, you may want to prepare what you want to share in advance, so that you share the right amount, but it's quick and easy, and you move right into the agenda for the meeting, whatever that is. So we don't want you to discuss and get into a lot of personal information, just as you wouldn't if you're in an in-person meeting either. But please know that during these times, we are checking in on people, and we should check in on each other just a little bit more, because we have a lot going on, and that shows empathy, kindness, as well as the right level of professionalism as well. So we would prepare like what you want to share in advance quickly, and like a quick intro, so that you're ready to go and you're not kind of feeling awkward when the meeting starts and you don't know what to say. Okay. let's take a look at the next slide in terms of etiquette still. The distractions are things that we talked about a little bit earlier, and this is one of the difficulties that people will have. What we have found is that when or if you get interrupted at any time during your virtual meeting, most people understandably tend to get nervous and kind of freaked out, and we totally get that. And what we want you to understand first, and then we'll talk about each item on this slide here, is that we want you to understand that we're all in the same boat and people get it. So we have noticed that when we're conducting webinars and talking with our clients as well, you know, we're all understanding that there may be some distractions and things going on. So please try not to let it get you flustered. But what you can do in advance of your virtual meeting is shut your door to your office or go somewhere where you know that you won't be interrupted, and let other people know in the house, if you're with other people, that you need to be on a meeting for X amount of time. I learned this the hard way too, is that I've got a puppy at home and I need to give him treats to keep him occupied so he's not barking or interrupting me. So you may need to do that with any of your pets. Turn anything that might buzz off. So I'm very good personally about turning off my cell phone, but every once in a while I have forgotten to turn off or mute my office line, for example. If there's anything else that might buzz or bing at you during the course of your virtual meeting, you just want to make sure that you turn everything off. And by the way, if something occurs and you do get interrupted, it's okay to just say, oh, I apologize for that. One moment, let me handle it for just a second. And you can turn yourself or put yourself on mute on video and audio and just come right back. So please know too that you can either plow ahead through the distraction, and that's okay if that's an option for you. But if you need to handle it for a second, we're all in the same boat. We get it. It's okay to say, hold on 1 second, I will be right back. Okay. And this is where you can mute yourself, step away for a moment, and come back if you need to. And the last thing that we want to be mindful of, and I think this is a little bit different now that we're having virtual meetings versus in person in some ways, is we want you to be mindful of the time and keep track of that. So when you're meeting with other people, you're not overstepping the limit of, you know, their time and the time that they've given you, if it's their it is, but make sure that you've got your phone out or your watch on or whatever it is so that you can keep track of your time. What I do is I've got presenter view set up with my PowerPoint, which you can, you know, it's easy to do that in PowerPoint. You just select presenter view. And since I have two screens, my other screen that is offline here that you all can't see, but I can see, at the very top, it gives me the time so that I can keep track of, you know, where we're at in the meeting, et cetera, and I can keep track of time easily. So make sure that there's a good way for you guys to do that too. Let's talk about tip number 3, and this is communication, okay? And let me actually just pull all of these up because I want to talk through them quickly and have you guys be able to see them all at once here. So one of the other things that is a little bit different when we are conducting virtual meetings is, as we said earlier, you know, in some cases we will check in with people and take a little bit more time to do that, given everything that's going on in the world these days, okay? Have an intro prepared. A comment that you want to make, a response to how you're doing during this time, like we talked about in the previous slide, just so that you're prepared and things start out smoothly. Please know that once you get into the meeting a little bit further, you know, we all tend to be a little jittery at the beginning of a meeting, but as we get into it, we usually kind of calm down and it gets a little bit easier. But one of the things that you want to pay attention to on virtual meetings, especially too, is you want to speak a little bit more slowly and deliberately sometimes when you are online, because every once in a while there's the lag time that will occur for the audio because we're not there live, and you want to account for that to a certain extent. The other problem with virtual meetings is that if you're in a group, you may be talking over each other and that will cut off the other person, versus if you're in person, you can hear everyone still a little bit in the background. So you also want to make sure that you're speaking slowly and deliberately so that if you accidentally do talk over someone or vice versa, there's time to figure it out and let them continue. And then make sure that you think before you speak. Again, just being really deliberate. And know that just like in an in-person meeting, if you need to pause for a moment and think about something, or think about what you need to say next, or pause so that you make sure that you're listening to everything that they need to share and that they're saying. That's okay. Don't feel like you have to rush through all of your communication just because it's online. Focus listening, really important, especially virtually. We want you to listen to them fully. And again, give them that extra time to express something so that you're not talking over them. Pause to hear their answer. And keep in mind too that when people get nervous, remember that a lot of times when people get nervous, they tend to talk a little bit faster and start to ramble a little bit. So you want to make sure that you're keeping your responses and questions and everything else, direct and to the point. And also check in with who you're speaking with. Did that make sense, or answer your question? Okay. Make sure that the whole time you're communicating and online in the meeting that you're looking at the camera. It is, by the way, okay to have or take notes. You could just let them know in advance. By the way, I do have a notepad here. I've got some questions I wrote down, or I may be taking notes during our call. If you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. And also make sure that you watch their nonverbals as well. Okay. Katina, I know that we're at the 3:30 time, and because of the technical issues, I may go over just a minute or two, but I will go through everything quickly, so we will have time for Q&A. Just wanted to give you a heads up. In terms of, okay, good, awesome. Make sure you sit still and you're not, weaving, bobbing and weaving or swaying. I've seen people do that before when they're on camera. Breathe so that you're calm and relaxed. Ask questions and pretend like it's a natural conversation that you're having with a friend or family member. Okay. So take that pressure of, oh my gosh, I'm on camera, because you're really just talking to one other person or a group of people, just like you would in an in-person meeting. And one other really good thing too is to visualize how you want that meeting or interview to go in advance, because that will help you not just set the right intention, but it will calm you down in advance as well if you tend to get nervous for any reason with these virtual meetings. In terms of technology, and this is our last tip, and then we'll move towards Q&A here in just a second. But in terms of technology, a couple of things. If you are presenting some ideas like we are today, or you're interviewing for a job, you may want to have and create slides in advance so that you can allow everyone else to read the points and kind of follow along with what you're wanting to present for that day. So having slides is a great idea if it's relevant for the agenda and the meeting that you're having. We want you to have an agenda in advance, just like you would for an in-person meeting, and it's okay to keep notes and have that agenda on your first slide, for example. We talked about camera angle as well, so we're all set there. One of the other things, the last two things on this slide that I did want to mention though, is that in addition to when you get on a few minutes early, you're checking out technology and the mute buttons and everything else, make sure that you know where the chat feature is, just in case you need to pay attention to that. And also because you may need to use the chat feature if you guys are encountering a technical issue with the video or audio. So for example, Ramona just chatted with me a few minutes ago, and I was able to see that to handle the technical issues. Pay attention, remember that with the chat, please, that sometimes it's going to be to all or just directly to that one person. So you want to make sure that if you're sharing personal information in the chat, that you're doing that in the right way, that you're comfortable with. And make sure you check out as well where the Q&A button is. Also, the last suggestion here is kind of like what we talked about just a moment ago, is if for some reason Zoom is not working, or WebEx or whatever system or platform it is that you're using, you do want to have a backup option. And honestly, I would recommend that backup setup with them in advance and letting them know, hey, if for some reason Skype isn't working, we can use WhatsApp or whatever it is. So try to get and have at your disposal a backup option for connecting and communicating with them, because otherwise then you're just kind of sitting there and you're stuck, and you want to be able to conduct and have that meeting regardless. So our last quick thought here is, as you're formulating your questions, please go ahead and put those in the chat box, and Katina is going to handle that for us. Please, she'll read those out as we go. But As we're wrapping up for my part of it for the moment here, my talking part at least, please write down 2 areas of greatest need for improvement for you. Do you feel like, ooh, I get really uncomfortable, so I need to just practice with the technology so that I'm ready to go with that? Or if it's something else, I need to have a backup option. I hadn't thought of that. So please go ahead and write down 2 areas of improvement. And as we go through the questions today, I'll answer as much as we can. If any of you do have additional questions you'd like to ask us, even if it's later on and weeks later, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, admin@halliecrawford.com. Happy to answer those questions. So we do have one question that came through, and then Katina, if you could go ahead and just read those out, or you can share them with me in the chat box. Either way is fine. One of the questions was about lighting, and is that a common issue, and do we experience it a lot? So like I said earlier, it's kind of funny. I've experienced this myself, and what I've noticed is that seasonally, just again, depending on my office, where the lighting is and where the sun's coming in, I will have like half of my face will be lit up and the other half will be in a shadow. And it's actually really distracting. So you want to make sure that you're sitting in a location in your home that you can control the lighting as well as possible. And what I would do, honestly, is have a practice video conferencing meeting with a friend or family member with the exact same system that you are going to be using for your upcoming meeting, and practice with different lighting options, like go into different rooms, turn the light off or on. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you need to have the light off because that's actually better. But lighting is a really big deal. You might think, oh, it's not a big deal, but it really is a big deal. So you need to pay attention to that. We had another comment about kind of rocking back and forth is sometimes an issue for people. And that is usually something, understandably, when people are nervous, they might kind of sway or move back and forth. So this, again, is where I would recommend having a pen, what I normally do to keep my hands steady. And that actually helps me stay kind of still and not moving around as much, is I will hold a pen in my hand the whole time that I'm talking. It's below the screen and it helps me kind of sit up straight and also not wave my hands around too much. What I would recommend even more so, if you do tend to move back and forth, is get yourself situated in your chair in the right way so that you can't move back and forth too much. Like having a chair that has arms on it is good to kind of keep you in place, and then shift and put your chair directly underneath your desk a little bit more. That will help prevent you from moving as much. One of the other things, 2 other things that we've got, which is great, guys, thank you for sharing all of this and asking the questions, is it is very important to make eye contact the whole time while you're on video. Now, I will tell you that, I don't make eye contact the absolutely whole time though, because sometimes I need to look away when I'm thinking about something, and that's okay too. You need to be natural, but err on the side absolutely of looking into the camera and making sure that you're making that eye contact the whole time with them, because otherwise, like especially if you're looking at your slide, you need to make sure that you're always looking instead at the camera. If you need to look at your slide, that's fine, but then go back and look at the camera. So be very clear about you're looking at the camera and where that light is or on your laptop, I should say. So this is part of, again, why you want to practice with a friend. I can't stress enough the importance of that, because you need to make sure that you're actually looking at the camera and not somewhere else, okay? How do we let people know that you are opting not to use the video, or you're choosing not to do so for whatever reason? What I would recommend in this situation is, I don't think you have to necessarily let them know in advance, but I would err on the side of letting people know in advance how you plan to handle the call, just so that everyone knows, what the expectations are. If you do not plan to be on video because it's too distracting, in your office or home, you can just say to them and let them know, for example, in advance, my plan is just to use the audio, but here's the system that I'd like to use. If you need to let them know right then and there, you're not going to use the video, you can just let them know, look, I'm just going to do audio today. I hope that's okay with you. I've just got a lot going on in my space today, and I think it would be less distracting for us if I didn't use the video, honestly. So you can just let them know that in the moment too, and that's okay as well. And if they want to choose to use their video, that's totally fine. If you are conducting an interview with someone, you're the interviewee, for example, or if you're conducting an informational interview with someone, we strongly would encourage you to use the video because you will create, our belief is that you'll create a stronger connection with that person. And I do in some ways feel like it's going to depend on the person, but in some ways I feel that makes people a little bit more comfortable because you get that feedback and you're seeing the other person as well. So I would encourage you to err on the side of having the video, but if you can't do it for whatever reason that day, it's totally understandable. You can just let them know it's not a really good option for me today, whatever it is. Katina, do we have any other questions that I've missed? I just want to make sure that I've gotten them all.
We do not. I had a couple that came through and said, never mind, she just answered that question. And they're sharing their feedback about the greatest needs for improvement. This was awesome. We do appreciate your time. And it's a great reminder, you know, for myself and just some things to reinforce. So very much needed.
Good, good. I'm so glad it was helpful. And, you know, just like parting words would be, I think that just like anything else, we get more comfortable with all of this, you know, in a good way. And I'm going to see if I can right now just to say goodbye to everybody. But when we get more comfortable with things like this, understandably, we start to kind of slack off a little and, you know, be a little more informal and everything else as we get more comfortable with it. And it's good, everyone, to get more comfortable with it, but that is not a reason to become less formal and professional. You need to make sure that you're handling these as professionally as you possibly can. Okay? All right.
It's there. Professional and formal. I love it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Have anything, or Ramona, would you like to chime in?
Oh, thank you so much, Haley. I'm sure the attendees got a lot out of that, and we really appreciate you being here, but I do not have anything else. Just anyone has any other questions? If not, so we're going to call it a wrap.
Okay, good. Thank you all for having me, and good luck, everyone. You can do it. Just take it step by step and baby steps, okay?
Thank you, Holly.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone. Enjoy the remaining of your afternoon, and we'll see some of you on tomorrow.